10 toes down. Trying to fill up stadiums, minimum sold out. Mind, body, and soul. Got a heart full of gold. They can never hold me down. I keep my name on the low. How wild, my opponent been trying to chase for miles. The distance between looking like the West now. And my stamina adding up from setback, standing up. Look crazy, they see me and start pulling out their cameras.
This is the eNASCAR College iRacing Series.
Big dreams for a big profit.
The cars may be virtual, but the racing and scholarships are real.
Big dreams for a big profit. We got big bags, they got big problems. They big mad that we big got it. It's not a big dream to a big profit. Big dreams for a big profit. We got big bags, they got big problems. They big mad that we big got it. I turn a big dream to a big profit. I turn a big dream to a big profit.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to iRacing's coverage of the 8th race, the 2024-25 eNASCAR College iRacing Series, live from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway in Concord, North Carolina. I am James Pike alongside Joshua Lee and Taylor Burris, and TV, the end of the regular season tonight with the trucks of the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and by night's end, we will know who will be racing for the championship at Homestead, Miami in a few weeks.
We certainly will, and already just by watching the qualifying and practice, this whole race is going to be filled with some surprises, some drivers who are going to be going through some ups and downs, and we could see a couple of surprises make their way into this championship Final Four later on in a couple of weeks' time, because we all know that this combination, the trucks here at Charlotte Motor Speedway, is a favorite for pretty much everyone here on the iRacing service, because let's be honest, we all own Charlotte Motor Speedway when you first get on with iRacing, and you spend hours upon hours, laps upon laps to come out here.
Arguably, Josh, the most popular vehicle on the oval side of iRacing at one of the most popular tracks, so it's a familiar combination to a lot of people, but that just makes it racier, I think.
I think it's a combination that a lot of people love because it's just a great combination. The trucks race great at intermediate tracks. Charlotte is, of course, an intermediate track, but it's also one of the more unique, a different turn 1 and 2 than turns 3 and 4, multi-groove racing, very thin front stretch and back stretch these drivers will have to deal with as well. This is going to be an exciting race, and oh, by the way, a lot of points and crucial points on the line at that.
I think you make a good point there about the turns. If you took out the quad oval piece, this track actually looks a lot like Darlington, and you wouldn't necessarily think it. So, lots to cover this evening, but before we get going with the actual racing, a reminder that students who compete in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series and take part in at least one time attack event will be automatically entered for a chance to win one of 8 prize packs, including a Logitech G923 True Force racing wheel and pedal set for the Xbox or PC, and $30 in iRacing credit. So you can visit playflycollege.gg for more info on that giveaway. So a chance to get your hands on a very, very strong set of wheel and pedals to begin your iRacing career with. That's one piece of news that we have this evening. The other piece of news is the ongoing paint contest and the opportunity to get your scheme on an eNASCAR College iRacing Series broadcast. Here's an example of Missouri S&T's Caleb Bryan and what he has submitted to the paint contest. If you want the rules and entry information, scan the QR code on the lower right-hand portion of your screen, and if you share your post using the hashtag ECISDesignYourRide and submit it into the form, you'll have the opportunity to compete with your own scheme at Homestead, Miami. It'll be very interesting to see how that all pans out, how cool it'll be. There's Oscar Enriquez from George Mason University, another example of one of the paints that we could see in a few weeks. Taylor Burris, we are pretty much done with the schedule, but where have we been and where are we going?
Well, we started at a wide diversity of racetracks here when it comes to the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. Starting from the high banks of Daytona, we went to the short track of Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park, to one of the favorite 1.5 miles, Kansas. And, of course, throughout the rest of the year, we deal with a wide variety, including the road course at Watkins Glen. But here we are at America's home for speed at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And, of course, we wrap it up in a couple of weeks' time down in Miami at the Homestead Miami Speedway with the Xfinity cars with John.
and quite possibly the most famous free content that you can have on the iRacing service is the Charlotte Motor Speedway. This is the step ladder for everybody making their way up the oval licenses. The stars tonight, stars of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, they start racing on this virtual track located in the real world in Concord, North Carolina. It might be a mile and a half, it might be an intermediate, but it is very unique. 24 degrees of banking in the corners. Opened in 1960, and Austin Farr at Liberty University knows how to get it done here. Can anybody of our 39 drivers rekindle that same magic that Farr had last time we were here? We'll find out, James, in our final ride of the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series vehicles this season.
Been a long bit since we were here, October of 2023. It was technically only a season ago, but it's been some time, and we'll have a new winner this evening. This is your starting grid for the 8th round of the 2024-25 eNASCAR College iRacing Series. Peter Irons out of Winona State sets the fast time of the 30.135. To his outside, Stephen Wilson representing the University of Iowa. Michigan's Matthew Zwack will roll off from the third spot. Fourth position on the grid belongs to Jacob Bradley representing Purdue University in Indianapolis. And then Caleb Bryan and Logan Clampett from Missouri S&T and Cal State Fullerton complete row 3.
Moving on into row number 4, we will find from the Ohio State, of course, it is none other than Matthew Morton, followed by St. John's River State College of A.J. Hyder. Row number 5, we'll find the Ball State driver of Daniel Nanny with James Scioli right there next up in position from Eastern Washington University. Rounding out in row 6 will be Aaron Brown, followed by, of course, Adam Garza from Triton College.
Jonathan Evans out of Western Connecticut State to the inside of row 7. Daniel Falkingham to the outside of University of Maine at Machias. Row 8 sees Connor Urashak representing the Dinos out of Chris Treppa in row 8. John Forbes Jr. to the outside in row number 8 as well. And Alec Andricks to the outside of Drew Jua in row number 9.
Rolling off from the inside of row 10, it's UNOH's Tyler Skozin to his outside, representing the Patriots of Dallas Baptist University, Christian Charbonneau. Douglas Newbigging makes his return to action, representing King's College, and Julian O'Neill, representing Delaware, starts in 22nd. Belmont Abbey College's Jake Innes rolls off from the 23rd spot. 24th on the grid is Eastern Tennessee State's Matthew Burton.
Moving on, of course, we will see Parker White there from the University of Maine of Augusta, followed by Daniel Falkingham right beside him as well from the University of Maine at Machias. Connor Yarashak from Calgary will be in row 14 with VCU's Joe Armstrong. Rounding out your top 30 will be, of course, George Mason University's Zach Sprouse and Abram Vila from San Juanita College.
Row 16, Jonathan Evans representing the Wolves with Jake Cummings to the outside. Nathan Keister, Nick Lucci sharing row 17. Connor Safari, Chris Bryant round out the first 36 drivers in row 18.
Final drivers in tonight's field are Jose Childress Jr. representing the Yukon Huskies, Edward Sanchez starting 38 representing the Baruch College folks, and Dalen Atkins also for Belmont Abbey College will start 39th on the field. Coming up on one lap to go before we take the green at the line, and plenty of opportunities to get going here. Plenty of action to take care of. 90 laps these drivers will have to navigate over the course of this evening, Taylor Burris, and lots of fun that can be had in between this. Let's take a look at tonight's Logitech G Race analysis.
Absolutely. Well, it is a dash here, just about 90 laps, utilizing the fixed setup here, of course, for the iRacing service. Of course, the restart zone is going to be a fact, but with 3 sets of tires, drivers are going to have to figure out how the best strategy will be is to play. Best one is going to be probably pit at the halfway point, about lap 45, just as much as being careful coming down pit road at 45 miles per hour. So it's going to be interesting to see how drivers will do that. Most average strategy will be pit at that halfway point, but also make sure you have that spare set of tires in case we have a very much interesting end of the race towards that with a green-white checkered possibility.
You can expect at least one pit stop under green, so 3 tire sets available, the one on the trucks that we start with. So you'll take one that gives you 2 to play with if we get yellow flags, and if this gets a little bit interesting, Josh, in the middle, if we have yellows that break up these green flag runs.
Remember Iowa, we had a pretty decent green flag run at the start. Then we saw cautions breed cautions towards the middle of the race, and then we got a nice run to the checkered flag at the end. If we see that same thing, could see some alternate pit strategies. If we go green all the way to the end, James, hit pit road once, not a lot of thinking on the strategy, but only time can tell.
Still in lap 45, if that's how this pans out, but this is a very, very big hit. Pace car will make the hard left-hand turn on the pit road, and Peter Irons will lead us to the green flag representing Winona State. Green flag is out, and we are underway with race 8 of the 2024-25 eNASCAR College iRacing Series from Charlotte Motor Speedway. And Stephen Wilson got an even better jump off the line than Peter Irons did, and Wilson's going to go from second to the lead before we even get to turn 1. And it's also Silas Jr. that will have to fight with Peter Irons for that second spot.
That was a little bit too close right there. I hopefully have to see if he didn't get a penalty, but so far he's showing he is all good, but that was absolutely on the mark for Stephen Wilson to get that jump to the lead field here as they work their way out of turn number 4. It's 2 by 2 by 2, about 10 rows deep, a little 3-wide action further back as they come across the line.
Here's your battle up front. These are your first set of 8 cars, and one car in the fence is spinning. It's Daniel Falkingham who gets turned on the entry to turn 1 to bring out the first caution of the evening.
Oh, and more are getting collected. That was Coonan hard into the wall. Douglas Newbigging involved as well, and early on we get the first yellow flag of the night. Is this going to be a sign of the times, James, or will this be a one and done? That was a big wreck in turn number 1 that started with just a handful of cars.
Falkingham, Edward Sanchez, Chris Bryant, Aaron Brown, Thomas Coonan, Douglas Newbigging amongst the drivers involved in this incident on lap 2 of the 90 that we had to run. It started with Daniel Falkingham, who I believe got some help entering the corner and ended up going around, got a little bit of contact with Aaron Brown. That's where this starts. And then Falkingham gets turned, hits the wall, and more drivers get collected off the back of that. Let's take a look at the replay and see what happened.
Yeah, as they enter into the corner, you see Brown just gets a little bit of right there at the right rear of the driver of Daniel Falkingham. How about Brown going up, riding that outside wall, and unfortunately for a couple of other drivers trying to avoid it, there was no room. We go on board here with the BCU driver as they enter into the corner so far, and there you see he was able to get by quickly, but there you see drivers on the bottom trying to check up, but just unfortunately some not able to check up quick enough to avoid serious situations.
Fabulous work there from Joe Armstrong to slide underneath all that, not get caught up in it. Clean truck, which will be important here. Aerodynamics do matter to some degree at a place as fast as Charlotte Motor Speedway. Even if these trucks punch a decent sized hole in the air, you still want to make sure you have 4 working fenders, Josh.
And of that wreck, James, there was a lot of drivers that were trying to avoid it. Looking at Chris Bryant at another look, and he was slowing up to try and avoid it, got down, collected about 2 more trucks. I mean, that's what we talked about in the open, right? It's this thin racetrack that is, of course, you go to a Las Vegas, you could run 4, maybe 5 wide down into the corners. Here, you're barely making 3, specifically in turn 1 and on the back stretch here where they're going now. You can stretch it to 4, but once you get 3 wide, everybody is on their toes trying not to wreck. So we're going to see, I think, if we have more incidents tonight, wreck avoidance is going to be one of the most challenging things that a lot of these drivers are going to have to face tonight because they really just have nowhere to go.
I think the interesting thing when you consider where that wreck happened, Taylor, is that normally it's not turn 1 that you see incidents like that occur. It's more often than not the exit of turn 4, partially because turns 3 and 4 are tighter than turns 1 and 2, and partially because the exit of turn 4 is very narrow. You actually go over some of the underpass bridges that allow, or tunnels rather, that allow you to get into the infield right about where the trucks are now. And so that sort of tightens things up at that corner, and more often than not we see a lot of drivers bounce off the fence in turn 4, so a little bit surprising that it didn't happen over there as opposed to turn 1. But we've also seen incidents like that in turn 1. I think of a few all-star races. I want to say it was the 05 I think all-star race. There was a wreck just sort of like that where you had contact between, I think it was the Busch brothers perhaps, and one went around just the same way that Falkingham did, and it collected a handful of cars beyond that. So Interesting thoughts to ponder, and a reminder that if you want more information on your iRacing career, you can log on to iRacing.com today to find out more about how you could potentially participate in the College Series, the Coke Series, or anything else involved in the world of eNASCAR. But interesting to see where this happened so early in the race, Taylor.
It really is there, James, and we know for a fact that it also has to do with a lot of just that early start, everyone on fresh tires. You see how much the hole that was punched in the air for every one of those drivers there. I mean, consider this almost as what we would see at Daytona, but how they were already 2, 3, almost 4 wide in some cases, a little bit further back. So that's just the case of what we are having to deal with here in this stage of the race. It'll hopefully taper off if we can get a long green flag run, but for now, it's going to be all up together, lined up 2 by 2, 3 by 3 even in some cases as we get set to go back racing.
Could potentially affect whether or not those drivers qualify for the finale at Homestead, Miami as well. That's something we'll have to keep track of this evening as we'll get back to green flag racing coming to lap 6 of 90. Stephen Wilson in control. Jose Solis Jr. right next to him. Yukon and Iowa on this front row as we get back up to full speed at Charlotte, and another great restart for Stephen Wilson, who will clear this field by at least 1 truck length, maybe 2, entering turn 1.
3 wide already through 1. Is this going to be safe? This go around off of 2. Little bit of door banging, and you can see just how thin this racetrack gets as they're bouncing off of each other through the mid-pack back to 3.
How terrified are you if you are Dr. Trey Cunningham, the director of Belmont Abbey's Motorsports Management Program, fielding these cars here? They were all in the middle of that 3-wide mess, and something could go very, very crazy with the way they're racing. Very sideways, very wrong, perhaps, if they bounce off of each other. As Matthews Wack is now in the heart of this up at the front of the field, trying to find his way around either one of Irons or Solis, Taylor.
Yeah, he was stuck right there in the middle of a couple of 3-wide battles, but he's able to gather it back up, gets a little breathing room as he's going to try to run that mid-lane there as they come off of turn number 4. Everyone else trying to find their way down to the bottom of the racetrack. But we see with Matthew Wack and Parker White, they're going to try to keep that outside lane going with some momentum on their side as they make the run around the outside of Peter Irons right there from Wyoming State.
Now this part of the racetrack, 1 and 2, it's a little bit easier to roll momentum on the top side because you've got a wider angle to work with. It's a wider set of turns than 3 and 4, but you get down here, the bottom is where you want to be more often than not, John.
As we take a look at the race back for 23rd, as well as that race for the lead. We talked pre-race, James. What kind of racing would we see? Would we see everybody get strung out? Would we see everybody in a pack? Obviously, almost identical performance in each of these trucks that are racing out on the track right now. So we're seeing everything on the racetrack.
So a good look here at the battle for 27th. Chris Treppa leading Jake Innes and Jalen Atkins, both representing Belmont Abbey College. Home game for the folks at Belmont Abbey. The school's campus located about, we'll call it 30 minutes down I-85 to the south. Heading towards Atlanta and going basically to the other side of Charlotte from where these drivers are virtually in Concord. That's where you find the campus. So those drivers running together. And neat to see 2 schools, or 2 drivers from the same school with their paint schemes side by side. We've had that a few times in the College Series, and always much more.
Absolutely, as we watch those 2 work together now as they try to work their way through the field. Meanwhile, back at the front, how about Matthews Wack already moving up into the top 3. He's got Jose Solis Jr. right there from Yukon. Of course, the women's basketball team made it into the Final 4 here this year, so it's going to be exciting to see what Yukon can do as Jose Solis Jr. tries to hold on to second. Parker White, though, barreling down on Matthews Wack as they head down the back straightaway.
Parker White, Logan Clampett side by side for the 4th position. These 2 were in the mix for just about the entirety of all those recent College Series racing miles. So not a huge surprise to see them fighting each other and near the front of the field as well. Then you got Jacob Bradley just sort of sitting in the wings. But Peter Irons is the one starting to slide back a little bit. Nick Lucci trying to be the 2nd driver from Purdue University in Indianapolis. They too had 2 trucks in tonight's race. But Lucci trying to work underneath Irons just towards the bottom of the screen as we go home for it and get a good look at the battle between Daniel Manny and Caleb Bryan for 13th.
as they race their way back into turns 3 and 4. You can see Brian upstairs trying to work that outside line that we mentioned earlier. Multi-groove racing is real here at Charlotte. That bottom line is going to be where everybody trains up, but the outside line is very, very usable if you're trying to make passes. Just take a look at the momentum Caleb Bryan is able to hold on that outside. He will not quite clear Jonathan Evans, who is his closest truck to the inside, but he will with a little bit of help from Adam Garza behind as they race to 3.
We're noted that Caleb Bryan is also one of the drivers who's already submitted his paint for the eNASCAR College iRacing Series paint contest. And if you win that, you come away with $500 in iRacing credits and a swag bag exclusive to you, courtesy of our good friends at iRacing. So that's, probably tracks and cars worth for a year in pretty much any discipline minimum, Taylor Burris, if not more than that.
You could probably, especially if you utilize the iRacing Black Friday sale later on this year as well, you could get multiple years of iRacing membership as well as pretty much every single bit of content on the iRacing.
I think if my math under the Black Friday sales, we look on board with the Western Connecticut State Wolf, Jonathan Evans trying to hold off Nanny and Matthew Morton just behind him. But by my math, that would be on the Black Friday sale, I think, about 5 years worth of subscriptions. So if you wanted to just not have to worry about that and just make sure that you're going to go to race for a long time, Josh Lee, easy way to do it if you win the paint contest.
Sounds like more and more racing to me, and you can see the diecast up there. I'm taking a look at a Terry Labonte, who's going to be represented this weekend in Darlington in the throwback schemes. But as Evans races on, now we're seeing single file start to work its way in. Adam Garza, Caleb Bryan, we saw them like the outside line. Adam Garza was able to get around Caleb Bryan. Saw them like the outside, they're still working with it. There goes Matthew Morton around the outside of Jonathan Evans. And that is Ohio State moving its way further up into the top 15. That was P14 in front.
I think that might be a Ricky Rudd tie grind scheme on Evans' legs there as we slide up to Pickerington, Ohio's Matthew Morton, representing the Buckeyes of Ohio State, national champions in football yet again, and for the first time in a decade back in January, and Morton trying to put on a championship performance. He's got a shot to try and work his way into the championship finale, so big night for him. Points are definitely going to be on his mind.
Absolutely, but right now he's got to be careful because he is thinking about going 3 wide, and they are really closing up the gap right there in front of him. You got Cummings and Ryan right there in front of him as he tries to find which lane has some better momentum to help propel him further up the running as he will find that hole, goes around the outside of Caleb Bryan in order to take that position, as they say, side by side, heading into the tack straightaway. This is the battle of P11, Morton, Bryan, Nanny, and Jonathan Evans. We've just pretty much been on board with all of these drivers here, so really putting on a great show just outside the top 10.
I think the most impressive thing, and it's typical of truck racing here on the sim at Charlotte, is that these trucks are so momentum-based because they run so low in the RPMs compared to an Xfinity vehicle or a Cup Series vehicle that it's just hard to create separation, Josh. And so you see a lot of the straight side-by-side racing in the middle of the pack because it's all depending on how much you can stay on the gas and how quickly you can get back to the gas.
It's not quite Daytona, Talladega, or Atlanta level pack racing, but there is a little bit of a draft. The draft does work. I'll go back to that battle we saw with Caleb Bryan just a couple of laps ago. He got help from Adam Garza behind him, pushed him in front of the truck that was to his inside. That is how strong the draft even is here. And as we take a look at the battle for 4th, here comes Logan Clampett, who looks to the inside of Jacob Bradley. Bradley representing Purdue University in Indianapolis. Logan Clampett, as he has been since the beginning of this season, representing Cal State Fullerton. They're still side-by-side out 4 with another eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver and Parker White on Clampett's back bumper.
You got 3 Coke Series drivers in a row because Connor Yarashak, representing the Dinos of the University of Calgary, has also entered the picture. He rides 7th at the moment, so Clampett will make the pass on Bradley. White will next be tasked with trying to do the same, and we'll see where Yarashak goes because White Would love to get the spot, but also would love to not give up the position to Yershak as well. So a bit of a tightrope walk that Parker White is going to have to handle here, but he'll duck to the inside, and now you'll see everybody drop down there, and then maybe think to go to the outside. We'll see where Yershak decides to go, but that may open up an opportunity for Peter Irons here.
Peter Irons is going to follow suit, and how about this? High, wide, and handsome. You see Connor Yershak make his way, work around the third lane, around that outside wall, and is able to complete the pass on Jacob Bradley. Stays tucked up behind Parker White for the moment, but that's impressive. We haven't really seen a whole lot of passing from the third lane. Mostly it's just been stuck to that bottom of the racetrack and middle lane. So really good job right there by Yershak, and to keep the pace rolling in his favor, staying tucked up behind the driver of Parker White.
I think the most impressive thing here, Josh, is how Yershak managed to make that work. He was committed to that high line in the middle of the front stretch and stayed up there, rode against the wall, carried momentum, made the pass. It takes guts to make that kind of commitment, but it paid off for Yershak.
You just have to be committed, especially if you're running that outside line. Just commit to the line, keep your momentum going, because like you mentioned, James, low RPM in these trucks, very momentum-based. If you burn off that momentum, it's not going to be hurting for a corner or two. You're going to be hurting for a couple of laps, as they're still side-by-side back to turn one. Handfuls of pockets and battles as they work their way through the field, but still trying to work that outside. I think we're going to be talking about Purdue University at Indianapolis a lot tonight as we go on board with the University of South Carolina at Beaufort. It's Connor Trafari.
We'll ride along with the freshman Stingray out of Bluffton, South Carolina. Let's listen in as we hop on board Connor Trafari in tonight's Play Fly Esports on board. Just watching Trafari's onboard, it's just how much these drivers are trying to work their way up to the high side of this racetrack. Not necessarily traditional, but again, you talk about the momentum, you talk about how important it is to have good speed on corner exit. You think about that, it makes sense why a lot of these trucks are working their way up the racetrack, and they're not necessarily married to the bottom. Taylor.
Caution is out as it's Treppa.
Yellow flag. I saw that just out of the corner of my screen right before it really took off. But Chris Treppa in trouble and in the fence for our second yellow flag of the evening on lap 27 of 90. Just got a third of the way through the race, in trouble once again.
I think, James, that might have been a lot of the same stuff that we talked about in the first caution of the night. I think it's the same 3 wide into turn 1. And just ran out of real estate a little bit too quick. But does this open the door for alternate pit strategies? We've gone now 28 laps on these tires. We are close-ish to halfway. They're not going to be able to make it on fuel from this point just yet. But I think we might be close, that if anybody wants to try an alternate strategy, we could see it. Here's the replay going into turn 1, 3 wide again. And I think 40 of Chris Treppa just comes down slightly, a little too much, runs into Abraham Vila, sends Treppa up and into the wall, and unfortunately, I believe that was Jake Innes that got involved at Belmont Abbey, and unfortunately, James, here's your onboard.
Yeah, big shot there. Big damage to the engine, I would imagine, for Innes with the hit that he took. I know there's a lot of front-end damage on his Chevrolet Silverado, so work to be done in the pits for Innes to try and get that truck fixed up for a driver who has just not had any luck in the College Series this season. That being said, though, you nailed it right on the head. Pit strategy may be a thing. Pit strategy definitely is a thing because everybody is in for service. So this would set drivers up to split this race, and it would make things interesting. If it goes green the rest of the way, because you'd be good to go to the end on fuel if we don't get green, white checkers. But if we start getting a few, it gets a little bit iffy.
Absolutely here. And how about this? Jose Salas Jr. winning the race off of pit road right here, and with a 4-tire stop. That's the thing. It wasn't due to the fact of a 2-tire, a 14.4 second lap time, and a couple of black flags possibly here for Burton and Atkins, who are unfortunately going to be at the end of the field. But James, it's going to be an interesting one when we go back green.
It will indeed be interesting, Taylor. Tonight's broadcast of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series is brought to you by Logitech G. Through design, engineering, and a love of driving games, Logitech G takes racing simulation to another level. Logitech G, the official wheel and pedals of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. And by Playfly College Esports. It's a new name, but the same amazing experience. Visit playflycollege.gg for collegiate esports competitions, merchandise, news, and more. 30 laps now on the board in this final race of the regular season for the 2024-25 eNASCAR College iRacing Series from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. James Pike, Taylor Burris, and Josh Riley on hand to cover this last race of 8 that will determine the final set of drivers that will advance to Homestead, Miami, and compete for the big prize of eNASCAR College iRacing Series champion at that virtual mile and a half in South Florida in 2 weeks' time. It's a busy, busy month of iRacing too. Because worth noting, Josh Lee, we have the finale to the College Series, but we also have Coke Series action in April aplenty as well.
Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup is also continuing as well. There's a lot to go on in the iRacing World Championship space right now, but focusing on the eNASCAR College iRacing Series, we're going to be talking about points later on tonight. We hopefully will have those 25 drivers that will go on to Homestead in 2 weeks' time. But James, I mentioned that number 25. That's all we're going to take. I mean, we have had 39 drivers here tonight. We normally have 40 on the grid. We're going to take only 25 to Homestead. That is going to be an exclusive club for drivers racing for scholarship money and those iRacing credits.
And plenty of scholarship money to be had. $10,000 to the champion at Homestead, Miami in 2 weeks' time. For now, though, we have a race to settle in Charlotte. Jose Salas Jr. won the battle on pit road, gets the jump on Stephen Wilson. We're back to green flag racing at Charlotte Motor Speedway. The first 2 trucks already in line, and now Logan Clampett and Matthews Wack trying to figure out who wants third as Wack slides back that inside lane, gets a good jump on this initial lap. It's Wack with the ability and the momentum to fight back on that high line down the backstretch.
Really good side-by-side battle for positions here as we watch Clampett trying to work with Wilson to work that outside lane. Wack also follows suit like you pointed out there, James. But how about Yerishak? He's also in the hunt as well. He'll dive to the bottom, try to get tucked up behind Parker White in order to try to see what they can do. But to the lead, Stephen Wilson, new race leader once again on lap 32.
Wilson takes control of this. Yershak with a nice job so far. Started in 15th up to 6th. And how about John Forbes Jr. in 10th? This one truck goes down to the inside. But Forbes, winner at Talladega a few weeks ago, started 28th up to the 10th position. And all just off from his drive. No pit strategy involved there. So nice work there for Forbes to try and get back up to the front. As you see one truck bounce off defensively. That's Congress with Jake Cummins. That got the ball further back in the field.
Western Connecticut State's Jonathan Evans was the one that ended up going on the apron in the backstretch. 3 wide for a moment. That was Ohio State and Ball State as we look at an eclectic mid-pack right now that seems to have drivers going every which way back to turn 3. How about a majority of drivers now running the outside, James, as we continue on with the battle for the lead. Wilson versus Clampett on the backstretch.
Logan Clampett now pressuring Stephen Wilson. This is really the first battle that Wilson's had to fight all race long. He's been in control of this for the most part, but it's now Clampett who is beginning to add some pressure to Stephen Wilson. And will that allow Matthews Wack to close in? Will that allow Yershak or Solis to try and get up a little bit further? Meanwhile, Daniel Manny, the first side-by-side battle in this field, trying to take away 6 from Parker White and Peter Irons.
Good fight for position here as they work their way across. The top 3 comes across the line, separated by about a truck length apiece. Here you see on board Wilson and Clampett, all 3 as we see the dog right there behind Logan Clampett, watching on, seeing if Logan Clampett can get a win for him here tonight as they head down the back straightaway. But both of them locked in. I got to say, though, for Steven Wilson, compared to his championship that he had in the Coke Series a couple of years ago, this year has been probably a dominant year that we're looking at, a year that we will remember for Steven Wilson here in 2025.
Championship trophy over the shoulder of Wilson and a dog over the shoulder of Logan Clampett. James, what a striking difference.
Oh, also, let's not forget that Wilson just got a new bumper of his own a few weeks ago as well, so he has dog power and dog support just the same, just not visible in the scene now. But Taylor makes a great point, and I think it goes back all the way to when Steven Wilson was working his way through the Coke Series ladder. The way he performed in the qualifying series and contender series, you could tell pretty quickly that Wilson was the kind of driver that was going to make his way into the Coke Series and become a mainstay in it. And over the past few years, the championship he won in 23, the races he's won not only this season but in past seasons. Steven Wilson, unquestionably one of the top drivers in eNASCAR right now, and showing why, especially with the versatility. It's not just the Cup car that he can run well in, it's the trucks as well. He's paced this field by and large throughout the duration of this College Series race in Charlotte. Even Clampett isn't necessarily able to hold on so easily. Here's a look at Adam Garza, right on the edge of the top 10. The driver out of Chicago, Illinois, representing Triton College, the freshman, mass communications and multimedia major. This is the last position for scholarship money in this race. $250 if he can hang, or rather $100 if he can hang on to it at the end of this race. But plenty of racing to go, Taylor. Lots of battles to be had yet.
Absolutely, as we go on board with the Grand Valley State University of Noah Coaster there from Middleville, Michigan. A big issue, though, one truck in the wall, multiple trucks spinning as we're on board, and we stay green. How about that heads-up driving? And they're still going to go at it here. It's a major checkup. This is going to cause a lot of separation throughout the field now as they bunch back up here in this hornet's nest of trucks.
That was a big, big incident. I couldn't tell initially who it was, but I think Mario Miranda might have been the one that got the worst of it. Miranda and John Forbes Jr. made contact with, I believe, A.J. Hyder, and that almost was a really, really big incident towards the back of the field. They kept it together, but it spread out everyone in this group. So now you look at James Sailway and everybody here, all in 21st, 23rd, but all about maybe 6 or 7 seconds back of the race leader. Just look at the replay on the bottom of your screen.
It was Miranda all the way on the bottom, hits Hyder, goes up into Forbes, and Miranda almost 90 degrees to the left. He ends up getting it back straight. Was not slow enough to bring out the automatic yellow flag, so we stay green. Not a ton of damage to Miranda's truck as well. He is continuing on in his current state, about 5 seconds behind the tail end, or I'll call it the 28 car pack, kind of the leaders up front. So he stays on the racetrack, a little bit of damage on that truck, but nothing, I think, if we get another yellow flag, and I will go ahead and go on record and saying when we get another yellow flag, James, they'll be able to bring it down, get a little bit of that damage repaired, and not go off cycle on pit stops.
Bold prediction there, Joshua Lee. So you think we'll have another yellow. Taylor Burris, what's your read on this race so far?
I mean, we are going to get another yellow probably as well. Right at this moment, no. I'm going to expect a little bit towards the end as we go on board with a former race winner so far this season. Saddleback College's John Forbes Jr. as he is trying to make up some ground after he got caught up in that incident with Miranda. And he's back in the saddle once again as he tries to get his way back up to through the field, as he's got a lot of work to do, though, as he tries to fight his way.
Big fight that can be had here. The Rancho Santa Margarita, California native, the winner at Talladega Super Speedway, joined Logan Clampett as the only 2 drivers to represent Saddleback College and win in the College Series. Connor Yarashak here riding in 3rd. Back to the pit strategy, though, as Matthew Zwack representing the Michigan Wolverines tries to chase him down alongside Parker White, winner of the last time out from the University of Maine at Augusta. Just some quick math. If this were to go green the rest of the way, and that is a very, very big if, then you would want to split the rest of this race down the middle from when you last pitted. That's going to be ballpark lap 60 or so, give or take a few. So I would expect at least a few trucks to come in to try and take advantage. Maybe if you're running a little bit further back and you want to try and short pit and gain a little bit of track position, make sure you've got fresher rubber for the duration of this. That's certainly an option. So maybe some of those drivers I would think from about 10th on back, it's certainly worth considering that strategy. But I think a lot of these drivers up the front, they have the track position. There's no need to come down pit road unless you absolutely have to.
Pit stop kind of gave these drivers a little bit of an easy out for that now first pit stop. I mean, we mentioned when we looked at the race analysis, looking at 90 laps, okay, if we go green for all 90, pit it halfway, don't really have to think about the strategy much more than that. That yellow flag came out 16 laps ago. Then these drivers had to think about it a little bit. They wanted to get fresh rubber on. We saw the entire field come down. Now, they're not good to the end, especially if we get overtimes. I mean, nobody in this field, at least right now, looks like they're trying to save. That will be a losing battle with track position for the rest of the field. So we're not really seeing that. We're expecting now pit stops soon-ish, but when do you pit? Do you cut it halfway? Do you run the tank dry right as you're safe, which was a couple of laps ago? Do you start coming down? Do we see anybody try and bring the rest of the field down and go off strategy? This is going to be interesting when these drivers pit. Of course, all of this goes out the window, James, with a yellow flag. From here on out, they're good to the end. Yellow flag comes out now. Pit, you're good. No yellow flag. We're going to be talking about strategy here for the next few laps.
Yeah, I think there are two prevailing schools of thought. If we don't get a yellow, it's either run it all the way down and get a splash at the end, or come down midway through this green flag run and try and split it in half. And if we go green, it's that east track that's going to be the more successful one. But if we get a yellow, then you give up all the track position for no reason. So it purely is a gamble, but you never know which side of the coin you want to be on until you've got that hindsight 2020. As Steven Wilson, Logan Klimpett, and Connor Yarashak continue to pace this field whack, right? And Solis Jr. Solis, the highest running of the drivers in this field, who are either, or rather, the highest running driver in this field who does not have Coke Series experience. Matthew Flack was Coke Series a year ago. The rest of that top five all active Coke Series drivers. So a big shout out there to Jose Solis Jr. Peter Irons also has managed to keep his truck in the top 10. He's fighting Matthew Morton for the 7th position as it stands, but especially in the back half of the top 10, a lot of drivers for whom the College Series is their big platform, putting together some strong runs.
Absolutely, really good runs here as they're a little bit side by side further back as we watch Glampit. Glampit right now not really keeping up with the pace of Steven Wilson. In fact, last time by, he was about almost 2/10 off the pace here. So let's see what happens. But here comes Parker White to the inside of Jose Solis Jr. And they're going to battle for the 5th spot. White drops back behind in line. So far, not going to work out. But Steven Wilson and Jose Solis Jr. are the fastest out of the top 5 drivers here you see on screen.
Yep, everybody running ballpark 31.9, 32-second lap times across the board. The only difference is whether or not you're in the draft a little bit. So it makes sense that the trucks, especially those directly behind irons and that little pack you see in the middle of the screen, would be maybe a tick faster than some of the leaders who are a little bit more spaced out. But again, Josh, we're talking about tenths of a second here, and I think that goes back to just how tight these trucks of the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series are.
And these trucks now are starting to blend their way up the racetrack as the tires wear. Take a look at this replay. Focus right there, middle of the circle that you have. As we go into turn number 1, lap truck on the inside. Almost wrecked it up into Andrex, and Trifari saves it through turn 1. And that was another close call, almost receiving a yellow flag.
It underlines the desperation, I think, of some of these drivers that you have to go that fast, even on the apron, because you just can't afford to lose that much time. Because once you fall out of the draft here, you start losing lap times by tenths of a second. And, you know, what becomes a 1/10 of a lap difference becomes 2, and then 3, and then 4. And then all of a sudden, you're half lap behind, and you have no help to get yourself back into it unless you have a caution. So there's every incentive. You have to push just as hard as you can, as much as you can, for as long as you can. There's not really any room for let-up, Taylor.
There isn't, and you have to be careful also of how much you push, though, because if you keep pushing at this blistering pace you're trying to go at, you're going to lose that tire grip, you're going to struggle, and that truck, instead of sticking to where you want to keep it, it's going to keep washing up further and further, where you're going to be tight off corner exit, struggling for grip, and you have to be careful with that, especially here with these trucks, especially off turn 4.
almost, beginning of the baseball season. A lot of these schools here already into their collegiate baseball seasons. Sort of like missing your command if you're a pitcher. It becomes just that much harder to place the truck where you want to the longer you go on a set of tires. Same way it can become harder, longer pitchers out of the mound and the arm starts to tire out, harder to locate where you want your pitches to go. So same sort of concept here, just a little bit different when you're on four wheels, but it's still springtime after all, so it's appropriate.
Take a look at what we're looking at now. This is eighth on back. Nanny, Irons, Bradley, Morton, Forbes Jr. all in this group. A lot of red, a little bit of purple from Peter Irons, but then that Purdue University in Indianapolis gold that we've been mentioning a lot of Jacob Bradley. He's been hanging around that top 10. Started P5, fell a little bit, but has been very, very quick all night tonight. I would not be shocked if we group everybody up for another restart. We see Jacob Bradley march his way back up through the field, but these guys are just battling amongst themselves right now. Nanny clears Irons, but still has a decent way up the road to Adam Garza. It's about 7/10 from this group to the back bumper of Garza. Another 9/10 up the road to Parker White in the tail end of our top 6.
Jacob Bradley trying to drag his Boilermaker machine up back into the top 10 and into the scholarship paying positions. Top 10 in this race will receive some scholarship money to go towards their tuition, their books, their meal plans, whatever they may need. But again, it's a really neat way. I had the opportunity to chat with some folks earlier this week, Taylor. We all agreed that if the opportunity to race for scholarship to pay for things in college we were around, that'd be neat. But yellow flag on the track here to throw out strategy entirely and set us up most likely with a 30 lap dash to the finish. James Scioli, the driver involved.
A tough break right there for James Scioli. I was, before that caution came out, watching Jose Salas Jr., though. He has already moved his way up to third and was about to pass Logan Clampett for second. So I got to say, if we went into a long run, Jose Salas Jr. could have caught up to Steven Wilson.
Potentially, but we're never going to know at this point. We're not going to have a long run to figure it out. So Wilson will bring everybody behind the pace car. And Josh, I have to believe everybody is going to come down pit road. This race is almost split perfectly into thirds with the way the cautions have fallen. And if you're, I think Wilson and Clampett, Solis, anybody running in the front, you could not have asked for better placement of these caution flags.
James, it is exactly a third. Lap 29 was the first time that everybody came down pit road. Now we are 29 laps on these tires. Lap 58, and here comes everybody back into the pit lane. Wilson leads the group down, and it's money stop time. Try and get off pit road the best he can. This could set them up for the remainder of this race, and it is just about everybody on the lead lap is in.
Because everybody who comes down now should be good to go to the finish on fuel, regardless of how many green white checkers we have. Taylor Burris, let's take a look what happened with James Scioli.
Looks like some contact there with Hendricks as they come off turn number 4, and then he's stuck in a 3-wide situation, and he thought he was maybe clear enough to go a little lower, but Burton was right there. And unfortunately for Scioli, hits the wall, slows it down, damage to the suspension of the truck there, and unfortunately that's going to be a tough break for James Scioli.
Not the first time this evening that we've seen somebody on that outside lane, especially going through the quad oval, end up driving down on someone thinking that they had more space to run off the wall and then getting themselves into trouble. And I think that's worth noting just in the event that we see something happen on the restart, because I have a feeling if we get a restart incident, we may see that come up again, just with the way this race has played out. If you haven't had the chance to get involved with the eNASCAR College iRacing Series paint contest, you can scan the QR code in the lower right-hand portion of your screen for rules and entry information. And the top scheme in that contest will walk away with $500 in iRacing credits and an exclusive swag bag courtesy of our friends at iRacing. Post a picture of your scheme on social media using the hashtag ECIS Design Your Ride and fill out the paint contest submission form that you can go to if you scan that QR code, and you may have the opportunity to come away with $500 in iRacing credits. Great opportunity if you want to go buy, maybe, say, Taylor, the new ARCA Menard Series cars, which I had a lot of fun with in week 13 a few weeks ago when I ran them. I think that's going to become a pretty big staple of the eNASCAR landscape going forward.
I mean, absolutely, when you think about it. And of course, there was a couple of other new additions, of course, with Portland being released as well. So, of course, for the NASCAR Xfinity cars, we'll be heading out there in the real world in a few months' time. So, get your chance to hop on there with the Xfinity cars as well and see what you can do at Portland as they get set to go back racing here at Charlotte with the trucks.
You wouldn't think that Portland's as complicated as it is for as flat as it is, Joshua, but then you dig into it. I ran a few laps there in week 13 as well, and it's got a lot of neat little characteristics about it in places, and it requires a lot of patience, I think, to run a good lap there, because you want to get back on the gas pedal and accelerate. You just have to wait where your car rolls through the corner.
That's exactly what I was going to say, James. Sector 1 specifically, like all the way up until that long sweeping backstretch, I mean, you just want to get back on the gas. You're like, can I get back on now? Can I do it now? Can I do it now? And finally, you feel like you're 10 miles outside of the corner, and you can finally get back on the gas and get those rear tires going. Portland is very fun. I'm excited for it to get on the NASCAR Xfinity Series fixed calendar for the Class B racing on the oval license later on this year. But 30 laps to go, James. We're going back to it here from Charlotte in the trucks. Wilson and Clampett on the front row, and the rest of the race in front of us.
Can Steven Wilson get the same kind of restarts that he has all night long and get away from the rest of his field? And I don't think that one was quite as strong. But Clampett also read that pretty well compared to everybody else. Clampett, the first driver who's been able to at least keep a quarter panel's worth alongside Steven Wilson. Can Clampett get that high line and maybe get the momentum to go alongside Wilson down the backstretch? Yes, he can. And Steven Wilson has his biggest challenge of the night so far as Logan Clampett, the Titan from Cal State Fullerton, works the high line.
It's going to be interesting to see, but Wilson power moves down on the bottom of the racetrack to clear Logan Clampett as we watch on the chaos. Oh, bit of contact right there mid-pack as they stay 3 wide heading off into turns 1 and 2. And as they try to negotiate, you see the chaos starting to build. Can they keep it clean and green for the final 29 laps? We'll find out as a couple of trucks poke their nose to the inside. There you see Daniel Nanny. How about him breaking into the top 5?
Daniel Nanny from 16th into the top 5 and trying to work underneath Connor Yarashak and Jose Solis Jr. Another battle a little bit further back down towards the bottom of this. Jonathan Evans, Nathan Keister, Zach Sprouse, Alec Andrex right around the 18th spot. That's the group that's 3 wide on the bottom half of your stream. Battles everywhere. Josh Lee.
We are 3 wide, multiple places on this racetrack. The top box gets it figured out at the front of the field. We're still 3 wide further back. This mid-pack, honestly, James has been trying to wreck. They have been bouncing off of each other, but they all keep it straight. We stay green, no yellow flag yet, but here it comes. Yarashak turn to the front of the pack. Solis Jr., and it's a parking lot on the front straightaway. The big one at the Charlotte Motor Speedway strikes with 27 laps to go.
At least 10 trucks involved in this incident that started when Jose Solis Jr. went sideways on the exit of turn 4. He was first to go. Yarashak was the next truck that started spinning, and then everybody else sort of piled in behind. And by the end of it, more than a handful of trucks involved with damage. The question is, how bad is that damage for the drivers that got caught up in this? Yarashak's got heavy right front damage. Solis Jr. I know picked up some. Jacob Bradley got caught up in this as well. And these are drivers, Taylor Burrish, that had been running up towards the top 10 for most of this race so far.
It really is, and that's going to cause some big issues. I see significant damage to the rear end of Jose Solis Jr.'s Toyota Tundra, missing some pieces. Same thing with Armstrong, and just a tough break indeed as he tries to go down pit road. As well as we see Forbes Jr. from Saddleback College, significant damage to his truck as well. So a lot of the heavy hitters that we were expecting to be at the front of the field battling for a top 5 or even the chance of a win, gone out the window for them.
Trouble for a lot of them, and we'll get a sense of the drivers that have come down pit road. Solis, Jay Cummings, Caleb Bryan, Connor Yarashak, Daniel Nanny, James Yeley, Joe Armstrong, Mario Morendo is down there, John Forbes Jr., Charbonneau, Lucci, Falkingham, Treppa, and Matthew Burton all in for service as we take a look and see how this panned out.
Yarashak just came up slightly too much with Solis Jr., but then here we go. Parking lot. One driver turned on the top of the racetrack, one driver turned on the bottom, and there was a lot of trucks with absolutely nowhere to go. There was a lot that went down to the infield turf, a little bit more grip than normal grass down there on the apron of Charlotte. But take a look. almost nowhere to go, but Andrix makes it through, utilizing that turf that I just mentioned. Didn't lose the truck nearly as much as he might have on grass. Another look at Eurocheck, barely coming up into Solus Jr. right in the face of the field. Hard hit for Forbes Jr. for Charbonneau that was going through as well. And a lot of trucks end up with damage. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trucks with extended, 7 trucks with extended times on pit road. Everybody that came in, James, that's damage repair. We're not seeing many alternate strategies now. We're seeing drivers try and make sure their trucks are aerodynamically okay for the remainder of this race.
We had only run 6 laps since the most recent yellow, so there's not much of a tire advantage that you could pick up if you came down and got 4 tires. That's why a lot of these drivers who weren't involved in that wreck decided to stay out. Not much that you could gain, and you burn your last set of tires if you do that. Most of this field has 1 set of tires left to them in the pit. Some of these drivers who have come down pit road probably have already used that last set, probably flat spotted their tires in that incident. Also, big shout out, we saw it on the replay, but how about that gold star wreck avoidance for the Delaware Blue Hen of Alec Andrex, who managed to sneak his way through that. So big credit to the business analytics freshman from Edgewater, Maryland, representing the University of Delaware. Lights are off on the pace car, Taylor Burris. Lap 66 on the board. 24 laps to go when we come back to the stripe.
All right, we got to settle back in here, so hopefully these drivers can keep it clean, and we'll see how this all plays out. Wilson has been the king of restarts since the start of this race, but Clampett had a little bit of something for him. Can he capitalize and try to stay pace? But we got a new couple of other drivers up towards the front of the field. How about Adam Garza sitting there in 4th spot, Abraham Vila inside the top 10, and of course we talked about him, Mr. Off-Road, Alex Andrix, right there in the top 10.
Going to have an opportunity for some new names to be involved in the battle for scholarship money. Top 10 drivers in this evening's race will come away with some scholarship funds to use towards their education. As Stephen Wilson and Logan Clampett yet again lead us to green. It's the University of Iowa versus Cal State Fullerton. Back to the front of the college series at Charlotte, and this time Wilson got a much better jump than Clampett, who could not read that restart as well as he did the one before. So Wilson in front, Clampett right behind, Zwack trying to go to third, Parker White now to 4th underneath Adam Garza.
Down the back stretch, and everybody starts to single file out. A little bit of 3 wide, close to the mid-pack, but the faces are at the front of this field. There's that mid-pack that has been dicing every which way all night long. And they continue to push and shove. They continue to race close down to turn 1. No issues here, but also no 3 wide just yet.
Yet. I think emphasis on the word yet. That's probably the most important word you might have said in that sentence, because it is going to come. Look at the move there. Alec Andrex in the heart of it. Drew Jua got right up in front of him on the exit of 2-2 to lock down the track position, but almost got turned. Andrex had to check up a little bit just to make sure it didn't run over the Georgia native, but as it stands, it's still green flag racing here in Charlotte.
Everyone now jockeying for positions here in the closing stages of this race. They're 2 by 2 by 2, about 10 rows deep. There we see a little 3 wide up ahead as we watch Sanchez trying to find his way, but John Forbes Jr., even being involved in that last caution, is still able to fight his way through, but he's got a lot of work to do as he tries to get to the inside of Charbonneau as they go now to the bottom 3 wide. Andrick stuck in the middle. He's got Nanny on his inside as he tries to find an opening. He'll slide up in front of a couple of trucks as he tries to hook his way through and hang on for dear life as they head down into 1.
3 wide yet again. This is pretty far back in the back, and yet they are still fighting for it. This is right around the 20th position. We have some cars that still are trying to work through the damage, but look at how tight this is as Hendricks will clip the fence. He gets to do it with Charbonneau, then gets to do it with Evans, and somehow keeps it pointed in the right direction. Some way as Forbes will clip the fence. He couldn't get it gathered up off the exit of turn 3 and ends up in trouble himself.
They somehow saved that. I don't really know how, but they did. Forbes Jr. ends up with the worst out of that. He just had too much momentum going through the corner, but they're wrecking again. Andrex again couldn't save this one. He's to the apron, collects, I believe, a Ball-State driver, Jake Cummings, behind. That was Conference University that I believe was caught up in that one as well. But Andrex wrecks again. That was a whole lap where he almost wrecked once, and then the second time brings out caution flag number 2 with 20 to go.
unbelievable work from Belmont Abbey's Jalen Atkins to get on the binders and not get into Andrex, who wrecked right in front of him on the apron there. Be neat to see that in a few moments. But Steven Wilson still in control of this as Andrex bounced off about 3 or 4 different incidents and sort of went from one to the next to the next to the next as they were racing as hard as they could towards that part of the field. And then Taylor Burris, eventually it all came unglued in the middle of 1 and 2, and it brings out another yellow flag.
You can only avoid so much chaos for so long, and for Andrex, it finally caught up to him, and unfortunate, but I mean, it doesn't look too significant here. Take a look at the entirety of this situation for Andrex here, and we'll kind of walk you through it as we see Andrex right there stuck in the middle. He comes out of turn number 2, and he's already in a tough position. He gets a little bit loose, and he's in a 3-wide situation, hits the wall right there. There's one issue, gets in front of Evans, and there's more chaos as he tries to juggle it. That's when we see the situation that happens to John Forbes Jr., and he is struggling. More contact right there from Evans as they come off of turn number 4. Now Andrex kind of trying to settle himself back into position to see if he can continue on, but already they're in a 3-wide situation where we see Scioli dive to the bottom and unfortunately make that contact with Andrex and Evans. Andrex nearly pretty much gets through as we take a look here from Sanchez's point of view.
And this all started, you see it right here, because Andrex tried to clear himself in front of Christian Charbonneau halfway down the back and was not clear. That was the match that lit this entire fuse. And so Forbes ends up down on the apron, doesn't have enough banking to check up. He hits the fence, and then they continue going down the front stretch, and you see the 3-wide battle that this will create. Tyler Scholes is actually the one that ends up getting into Andrex at the end of it, but I don't think Andrex realized that he was 3-wide to start with.
I don't think Andrex realized that he was 3-wide. I also think that was a bit of an aggressive move from Tyler Skokeson. I understand we're getting pretty late in this race right now, but I mean, 3-wide into 1 on an already tight racetrack with still a handful of laps to go. He just ended up getting some damage on that UNOH truck, but at the front, Wilson has been commanding. Logan Clampett has tried his might. He hasn't been able to do much, and James, he will still have an opportunity to enter the We Got Wheels giveaway.
Indeed, still do have an opportunity. Drivers who compete in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series and take part in at least one time attack event will be automatically entered for a chance to win one of 8 prize packs, including a Logitech G923 True Force racing wheel and pedal set for the Xbox or PC, and $30 in iRacing credits. Visit playflycollege.gg for more information. And I think worth noting, if you don't necessarily know the hardware landscape of iRacing, Taylor, the amount of drivers who have gotten their start in this sim and become competitive using something akin to the G923 True Force wheel or its predecessor, the G29, you could find that in a lot of rigs around the world.
It is one of the most popular brands to be utilized in all of sim racing. We can't thank Logitech enough for coming on board and being an integral part of just about every sim racer, whether they're starting off or upgrading. You can always guarantee Logitech will be the one that will help them progress their way through the rankings in the world of esports competition.
Half a lap from the restart that will come with 16 laps to go. Steven Wilson got a good jump on Logan Clampett last time out. Clampett was able to read Wilson's restart pretty well too. Restarts ago, so what is this third version of the battle between Clampett and Wilson have in store for us? Matthew Morton, Adam Garza, Abraham Villa, Peter Irons, AJ Hyder, Nathan Keister, Connor Trafari, and Christian Charbonneau in the top 10 as we get back to green flag racing. It's a better restart for Wilson once again. He will clear Clampett. Where does Adam Garza go? Did he get enough of a jump to be able to stay underneath Clampett entering 1 and 2? And what kind of run will Clampett get in the middle of the corner?
3-wide already. Matthew Zwack in the middle for Michigan. He gets through, but we're still fighting aggressive in the middle of a pack. This has been where all the stories have been, because up front, it's been Wilson ahead of Clampett, ahead of Irons, Morton, Garza for pretty much the entire night. His mid-pack is where the action seems to be. Trafari's now in the middle.
Matthew Zwack is trying to make sure that his hole does not get closed down as they continue to battle for third. And they now, I think, finally are going to sort out this 3-wide battle, and that'll allow us to turn our focus towards what's happening up front, because Matthew Morton has managed to get third from Adam Garza.
How about this drive right here? Don't forget Garza and Vila battling right there. Then Peter Irish, your pole sitter. He has fought his way up, but he's got to deal with trouble. Off of turn 4, multiple trucks involved. Trifari and Matthews whack around.
That was eventually going to pan out one way or another, and eventually they finally decided to go 4 wide to the most narrow part of the racetrack, and that just does not work here on the exit of turn 4 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and it brings out the yellow yet again on lap 75.
I don't think they were trying to go 4 wide necessarily, James. They kind of just ended up 4 wide, and we'll get a good look at that replay in just a moment. But now another yellow flag, 14 to go. Right now, through the field, there was a handful that came down the last caution. We have a handful of drivers that are on 4-lap old tires. Everybody up at the front, top 9 to be specific, still on the right around the same strategy, pitting back at lap 58. The immediate yellow flag after that, we had a handful come in, Charbonneau and Forbes, but everybody else, we're starting to see some alternate strategies through the top of the field. Here's the replay, James, and Trifari gets into Nathan Keister. Keister gets loose, saves it. That's where we end up 4 wide. Black had nowhere to go by the point Keister got there, came up into Daniel Nanny.
That's about a classic, or as classic an example of the funnel effect coming out of turn 4 at Charlotte Motor Speedway as you're going to find. Here's a blip shot of how this all panned out as Keister got the bump there, slides up the racetrack. They go for trying to all find the best real estate for themselves, and then again, it just funnels at the end and there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, this is just absolutely a tough situation for a lot of drivers here, and it's all about a little bit also that balance. Yes, we know there's only a few laps left to go for the race. Yes, there's only a few positions that get the scholarship money. But the thing is, you want to try to be there at the end to battle it out. You don't want to give it away even with 13 laps to go. And unfortunately, that is going to be the case for several drivers here who will give up the opportunity for that. Looking through the field, I believe Drew Jewett just received a black flag as well for a penalty. We'll catch to see what that situation is, but unfortunate for several of our front runners out of contention.
If you want to pay attention to how all of this ends up, the championship race for the 2024-25 eNASCAR College iRacing Series comes your way in 2 weeks' time from Homestead Miami Speedway, utilizing the vehicles of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. 8 p.m. Eastern, eNASCAR.com/live, Tuesday, April 15th. About as classic a mile and a half as you're going to find on the eNASCAR services, and a place, Connor, where you can run anywhere. If there's a line, you can find it because you've got plenty of room to run. And then the Coach Series, before we get to the championship for the College Series, comes your way from Rockingham. The debut of The Rock in the Coach Series next Tuesday night, April 8th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. for the pre-race show, all on eNASCAR.com/live. And I know our broadcast partner in crime from years gone by, Brake McCandless, is going to be in love with The Rock. And if you want to follow along with all these adventures, eNASCAR on socials, iRacing on socials, and more information to come too as well about the future of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series soon.
This restart is going to be crucial, James, because we've now been not wrecking a whole lot, but we have started to see a little bit of cautions breed cautions. We have started to see drivers stack up a little bit more than they did at the beginning of this race. What do we see now? 11 laps to go. Do we see the Clampett and Wilson show continue as it is with Wilson leading off Clampett, or do we see these drivers make it all the way to the checkered flag? Do we see Matthew Morton get the lead? Do we see Abraham Vila do something from row 2? We're about to find out. Do we end up slowing him down again, or are we going all the way to the checkered?
Parker White has the freshest tires of any one of the top 10. 6 laps on those tires, and they stack it up in the front of the field. That may be the opportunity that Parker White needs, because Abraham Vila just somehow hung onto it. But look at White drop down to the inside as they're single file for the Force 4 trucks. But now they're starting to work their way back to that 3-wide racing week season.
Absolutely. Logan Clampett did not get a good start there at all. He is going to fall further and further back to at least P4, possibly, as we watch Jose Solis Jr. and Marenza try to jockey around the position as they kind of fight their way back up through the field with now 10 laps to go as they come across the line. Matthews whacked on the bottom, trying to get around Bradley, but Wilson is holding on. But how about Matthew Morton from the Ohio State leading the train? It's trouble in the middle of turn 1 and 2.
We got Zach Sprouse and John Forbes Jr. who got the fence, but we say green flag racing, so that clears up the battle in the middle, and that leaves, I think, Vila as the last truck in line. They didn't get slowed up by that a little bit, so keep an eye on that just in case. Wilson there. Right now, it's the Big Ten Florida. We're all living in it. Ohio State and Iowa leading this group. Yellow flag, though, out. Caleb Bryan around in the middle of turns 3 and 4. Caution once again, 9 laps to go.
We slow down with Caleb Bryan, middle of turns 3 and 4. The Missouri S&T driver gets into trouble. And we slow down again with 9 laps to go. This is really helping this top 7, James. They're on 23-lap old tires now. The restarts might not be going their way. I think that was what slowed Clampett down, was he just didn't have the tire to get off in second gear. But now these are helping these drivers not have a long green flag run to the end. This is going to be another sprint.
It will be a sprint to the finish. You're right in that this is the last thing that I look at some of the drivers that pitted. Parker White, Tyler Stokes, who were high up on the alternate strategy wanted to see. This is the first incident that happened this lap. This did not bring out the yellow, but this was Zach Sprouse making contact with AJ Hyder, and then John Forbes Jr. just sort of caught up. Wrong place, wrong time. They hit the fence, but they kept it great. Or kept it straight, and we stay green flag racing. Then here's the incident with Missouri S&T's Caleb Bryan, who had some damage on his car to start with, caught the fence, didn't get the right run, right line with the corner that he wanted, and then nowhere for James Ciola to go. Just pounds into the side of Bryan's machine. Bryan stops there on the middle of the racetrack and brings out the yellow flag.
Now the question is going to be, what can we see from some drivers here? Of course, Stephen Wilson's been doing phenomenal, but now we have a couple of new drivers up towards those top 3 spots. Can Morton find a way to have a better jump than what Logan Clampett did last time by? Or could he have the same situation arise to where we could see more of that chaos on the restart here? It's going to be critical to see what Morton can do along with Garza, who's now lined up right behind Stephen Wilson. Best thing for Garza to do is try to just stay tucked up behind that Iowa driver and just try and push him and see what he can do if he can take the fight to Stephen Wilson.
Taylor, it's almost as if the March Madness that you have been so eagerly and adamantly covering over the last few weeks in the college series is spread over into April Fool's Day. And we're going to have a lot of fun next year showcasing even more madness in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. There's lots of fun, lots of exciting things to come our way, so stay tuned to the iRacing and eNASCAR socials for announcements coming soon. And even sooner than that, we'll have the point standings at the end of this race. We will give you the opportunity to see the drivers, the 25 folks that are going to be competing for the 2024-25 eNASCAR College iRacing Series Championship at Homestead Miami Speedway in 2 weeks' time to round out what's been a very competitive and wild and crazy season in all the best of ways, Josh Lee.
And like I mentioned earlier, we're only taking 25 drivers out of the normal 40 truck field or 40 car field we have had for the entirety of the season. We're taking the best 25 to Homestead, and we're also putting them in the NASCAR Xfinity Series machines, which Xfinity cars at Homestead, one of my favorite car track combos of all time. And seeing these eNASCAR College iRacing Series drivers wheel those things around for a championship is going to be very, very interesting. If you have not scheduled yourself to tune in on April 15th to the championship, I would pencil that in now because it is going to be exciting.
Homestead's a great combination. I just wish that I actually had speed there when I run it. I'm not good enough to really
hug the wall, James. Hug that wall.
I know. But there's a reason why I'm here in the booth and not on the racetrack, because I do not have the pace of these drivers. But these drivers have a show that they are going to put on for us. 6 laps to go at the stripe. Stephen Wilson and Matthew Morton, the first 2 in line. Remember, Vila had control of this, and then spun his tires on the restart. Will Morton run into the same problem? Didn't spin the tires, but he's got a slower restart, so moves up a ton of ground to Adam Garza. Baylor may have an opportunity to redeem himself at the bottom, but Steven Wilson is all clear entering turn 1.
How about this as they go side by side? Garza is able to clear the drivers with help from Vila. Morton trying to work with Clampett as they rocket down the back straightaway. How about AJ Hyder? He's now trying to get into the mix as the top 5 go to the top side. As we see a couple of other drivers go into the wall, but they have to gather it up and continue on their way. We stay green flag coming to get the big high five from Barney the Flag Man. 5 laps to go.
Look at Christian Charbonneau trying to split the middle. He tried to go 3 wide there, a little bit further back. He just did not have the momentum to keep it up on the corner. So he'll tuck him line behind Peter Irons. Parker White down there on the inside. He has the freshest tires alongside Connor Yarashak, but doesn't necessarily have the track position as they continue to work their way towards the finale of this race.
He tried to split the middle, and he did split the middle. Here comes Logan Clampett. Morton gets contact up and into the wall, and 4 Jack saves it on the front straightaway. We're still 3 wide through the middle of the field. They all get it together through 1. Do they keep it together? They do for now. We were side by side for second as we've got another truck into the wall. That time it was Charbonneau. He's slow on the apron. No pressure now. Side by side, Irons and Sanchez. This is for P9 on the racetrack.
Trucks dropping like flies at the end of this race, but all eyes here on Yarashak and White on the fresh tires. They're the two that may have the best shot at trying to get after Steven Wilson, but they've got to make something happen soon. They've got to run these leaders down and fast. They finally got some of the track position, but they're going to have 2.5 laps to try and get to Steven Wilson and use the fresh rubber to steal away the win in this College Series event.
They're running out of time, though, as they head down to the 3 and 4. Side by side is Parker White and Logan Clampett. Yarashak trying to make a hard push as they come across the sticks in the air. 2 laps to go as White and Clampett jockey for position.
If there's any sort of yellow, it may end up helping either one of Yarashak or Parker White. They may need the yellow, though, to make this happen. They're closing it quickly on Adam Garza. Yarashak peeking to the inside. They'll have the truck alongside Garza. May have the opportunity to get to second, but it's going to take a big send from Yarashak to get the job done. And big send is exactly what he tried to do. But fresh rubber helping him on the bottom. He'll be side by side with Garza as they come to the stripe. White flag here in Charlotte in the College Series.
Getting by Garza is one thing for Yarashak. Getting by Wilson is going to be another. Through turn 1, Yarashak will clear Garza. He could have a run through 3 and 4. He's going to have to want it. He's going to have to dive for it. Down the back straightaway for the final time. The Calgary Dinos got a shot at this.
Oh, Wilson tried to block it. Yarashak's going to go underneath him and try and move Steven Wilson up the racetrack, and Parker White may have the opportunity on the bottom. 3 wide to the start-finish line and a photo finish in Charlotte. And at the end of it all, it is Connor Yarashak representing the Dinos of the University of Calgary, who used the fresh tires to get the job done and wins the eNASCAR College iRacing Series in Charlotte.
What a finish.
Oh my goodness, what a fight there. And how about for the Calgary Dinos to take home the win here today? Connor Yarashak, welcome to Victory Lane.
He needed every single one of the 90 laps to get the job done. Had this been done a lap earlier, this is Steven Wilson's win that we're talking about, but instead, it's Connor Yarashak who goes to Victory Lane and I believe becomes the first Canadian driver and brings University of Calgary up to Victory Lane as the first Canadian school to win in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. So history made on NASCAR's home turf.
I asked Yarashak last round, James, what it was like representing the Dinos and representing not only his school, but also Canada in a way, being the only or mainstay Canadian driver in this field. And Yarashak gets his first win after a podium last round. James, what a final lap.
And this was all something that Yerashak and even Parker White had been setting up for the last 4 or 5 laps. They were catching Steven Wilson, but it was a big question as to whether or not they would get to Steven Wilson. And look closely here on the back straightaway. Yerashak slides up in front of Garza, and then Wilson tried to come down low to block. You see that move there? That's what opened up the door for Yerashak, because Yerashak effectively got to double through and sort of double cross Wilson, and then Wilson got stuck on the high line trying to carry the momentum. It opened up the door for Yerashak. It almost opened up the door for Parker White, but in the end, Yerashak is the winner of the final race of the regular season for the College Series. So how about that? 3 wide at the line. Connor Yerashak for the Dinos, the University of Calgary, wins it to represent Calgary, the whole province of Alberta, the Canadian side of eNASCAR, over Steven Wilson and Parker White representing the University of Iowa and the University of Maine at Augusta, respectively. Triton College's Adam Garza gets the job done to go home fourth. Logan Clampett finishes in 5th for Cal State Fullerton. 6th was Edward Sanchez for Baruch College. Daniel Falkingham 7th for the University of Maine at Machias. San Jacinto's Abraham Vila comes home in the 8th position. 9th this evening was St. John's River State College's A.J. Hyder. 10th was Chris Trepra representing Lawrence Tech.
How about the University of South Carolina Beaufort, Connor Trafari coming home in 11th, followed by Michigan with Matthew Zwack. University of Northwestern Ohio, Tyler Skozin in 13th, followed by UConn of Jose Salas Jr. Winona State with Peter Irons, your pole sitter, in 15th. The Ohio State of Matthew Morton in 16th, followed by Jake Cummings in 17th. Ball State is going to be with Daniel Nenny, with Saddleback College's John Forbes Jr. in 19th, and Grand Valley University, Nathan Coaster rounds out your top 20.
Jacob Bradley for Purdue University in Indianapolis ends up 21st. Christian Charbonneau 22nd. James Scioli for Eastern Washington University P23. Missouri S&T's Caleb Bryan 24th. Zach Brous rounds out your top 25. Nick Lucci, the other Purdue University in Indianapolis driver, P26. Drew Jua, Matthew Burton, Mario Miranda, and Jonathan Evans rounds out a handful of drivers in the top 30.
Jalen Atkins for Villan Abbey was 31st. Alec Andrix was the highest finishing of the Delaware Blue Hens in this race, finishes 32nd. VCU's Joe Armstrong was 33rd in this race. It was Innes, O'Neill, Aaron Brown, Chris Bryant, Douglas Newbegin, and Thomas Coonan finishing out the field. That, my friends, is what 13/100ths of a second looks like. Not quite the closest finish in the history of the College Series, but certainly the closest finish here at Charlotte Taylor Burris.
Well, we are now joined by the winner, Connor Yerashak, up here with us. And Connor, I gotta say, you absolutely made a brilliant drive there towards the end. Walk us through this win, and of course, I'm pretty sure you're excited to get the dyno at the front of the field.
Yeah, first things first, I'm gonna obviously apologize to Jose there when I wrecked us both around the top 5 with 30 to go. It was 100% my fault, and obviously I wasn't trying to do that, but it worked out that I was able to get my damage fixed and then put 4 fresh tires on it there. And I had one restart that I made no progress, and I was like, oh, that's kind of my chance done. But it went just long enough there at the end, and the way the bottom rolled on the restart, I was able to get up there, and then the tire advantage was definitely helpful racing for the lead.
Now, of course, real quickly, we know for a fact that you are a favorite when it comes to running the trucks. You were pretty much one of the top front runners in the qualifiers last year. How does this help you feel for going into 2025 throughout the rest of the year with this momentum to help you prepare for the next round of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series?
Yeah, Coke. I've had some, rough finishes where I haven't felt like I've been finishing where I've wanted to, but I've always loved the truck. It's always been my baby. So to run really good here, I started 15th and was able to make really good progress getting up to like the top 5. I got up to 3rd there, but then obviously I made that mistake and put myself way in the back. And just with how it worked out, it's always nice to win big races like that, especially in a really, really cool finish like that one.
Absolutely. Well, that is Connor Yerashak from the University of Calgary with your race winner. And, of course, next up, University of Iowa, Steven Wilson is with Josh Lee.
Well, Steven, you were the top of a 3 wide photo finish here from Charlotte, but That was after a really, really amazing performance tonight. You lose it on the final lap. Does that one sting, or are you a little bit happy with the performance you had tonight overall?
Yeah, no, I'm not really worried. You know, the next race is the one that matters for me the most. So, yeah, congrats to Connor. I kind of got a little used in 3 there. He kind of just drove into me, but I was kind of just swerving, trying to block over the place. I knew he had the fresh tires. So, yeah, I guess it was exciting. 3-wide finish for the fans. That's always good, but yeah, we take it. We'll move on. I didn't really have a whole lot of prep today. So the next race is really where it counts. And going into Homestead, especially with that Xfinity car, hopefully I can just have a race go green, have things go the way they should for my pace here. So, but I can't really complain, you know, with everything that's been going on here recently on iRacing. So I'll take it and move on.
Wilson Taylor is focused on Homestead, much like I'm sure Parker White is. The bottom end of the 3-wide photo finish. You're standing by with him.
Absolutely. Here with Parker White. Parker, a great drive for you as well. Had a couple of close calls in the middle section of that race, but you were able to recover. Walk us through a little bit of just calling the audibles to be able to get yourself back up in contention to almost steal that win away from both Yarashak as well as from Steven Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really expect to be there at the end because I just kept on going backwards as soon as I took those tires. So I feel like the speed difference wasn't big enough for me to actually make my way back up there. But I just got lucky with some wrecks, avoided some wrecks, and made some good moves on that restart and got back up there. So, yeah, just pretty solid finish overall. I knew coming out of 4 I wasn't going to win it, though, because I didn't have enough mo, but still a cool 3-ride finish.
I mean, absolutely great drive for you. I mean, did you feel like if you just had a couple of 100 feet, you could have probably taken that win away?
Yeah, probably. I think Steve and Connor were kind of focused on each other, just racing each other, and then I was just kind of there in the bottom. I think the whole reason I even got that close is just because they made contact. So, yeah, if the line was further down, I don't think they would have done that. But, yeah, for sure. I definitely had the mo there at the end.
Absolutely. Parker White finishing in 3rd place there, James, in one of the most exciting finishes here in the College Series.
A wild finish at Charlotte Motor Speedway to cap off what's been a fantastic regular season of racing for the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. And with that, here are 20 of the 25 drivers that are going to be representing their schools and racing for the opportunity to come away with the big prize in the finale. The championship race for the eNASCAR College iRacing Series at Homestead, Miami. $10,000 to the champion, Parker White. Representing the University of Maine at Augusta, Iowa, Steven Wilson, Logan Clampett headlining, and then right on the edge, here are the ones that just made it, here are the ones who just missed out. Josh Lee.
Matthew Morton in a tiebreaker loses out on the spot to Virginia Tech's Daniel Silvestri. I mean, that is just how close it was with this top 25. I said earlier, who's who of names, James? That is exactly what we're seeing in the top 25.
And think about how tight this was for drivers in this race tonight. Caleb Bryan and Tyler Skozen in particular had the opportunity. Nathan Keister, Edward Sanchez, Charbonneau had the opportunity to potentially race their way in and just didn't quite have the performances they need to make it. So they sit on the sidelines, but for the 25 that make it, Taylor Burris, a big opportunity. And for Steven Wilson, the opportunity to go back-to-back.
Absolutely, and of course it all comes down to this. The championship round on Tuesday, April the 15th at one of the most amazing mile-and-a-half tracks, the Homestead Miami Speedway, utilizing the Xfinity cars. And we know we saw a great race with the Xfinity cars a couple of weeks ago in the real world, and we know for a fact we're going to get it here once again, James, as the championship race kicks off in just 2 weeks' time.
And we've also got the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series to look forward to as well. The 5th round of the championship and a return to Rockingham. A first time in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series will headline a return to the Rock in the real world with the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So start your week off with the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. See the next gens wheel around the Rock. That is going to be one of the most exciting rounds of the championship, James.
And all those broadcasts for both college and Cook you can find on eNASCAR.com/iRacing. And more announcements to come about the college series coming up in the next few weeks, potentially even before the championship finale. So stay tuned to eNASCAR and iRacing socials for more information on that. For our partners at eNASCAR, Playfly Sports, and Logitech G, for our director Drew Adamson and the entire production team at iRacing, and for my colleagues in the booth, Taylor Burris and Joshua Lee, I am James Pike. Thank you so much for watching iRacing's broadcast of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series from Charlotte Motor Speedway, and we look forward to seeing you for the championship race and the finale of the 2024-25 season in 2 weeks' time, Tuesday, April 15th, Homestead Miami Speedway, 8 p.m. Eastern at eNASCAR.com/live. We'll see you there to crown a champion.